So I'm having some second thoughts about the ritual. And I guess the thing is that I really liked the film, and it has left an impression on me. And I guess one of the things I think a horror film is supposed to do is leave an impression. Like you're supposed to come away having kind of really felt something, and it does that. And the cast are great. As I said in my previous video, Rafe Spall's really good. He adds something, but all of the supporting cast are excellent. Like they do a really good job, and the whole feeling trapped in the forest, the kind of the way it sets things up, the slow building nature, you kind of just feel that they're never going to escape, and I really like that kind of element. And I genuinely wasn't really sure where it was going to go, or what the mystery was, or how it was going to unravel. And I guess the thing that I'm going to kind of talk about is that once the mystery had unravelled, I could still just feel like, despite the fact that I loved the feel of it, and I loved the dialogue, and I loved the writing, and the tension that they built between some of the characters and all the rest, I think that there's just more they could have done with it. So obviously there's going to be spoilers in this, so if you don't want it to be spoiled, don't watch the rest of this video. And obviously if you haven't seen it, it might not all make sense what I'm going to say, but I'm going to talk through two things. The first thing is the characters. I kind of feel like at the end of the day, the characters just feel a bit like, all of them to an extent, wasted potential. And we're going to end with Luke, who's Rafe Spall's character, because I've got more to say about him. But if you look at them all, firstly you've got Phil, and Phil is he's just totally useless, isn't he? He doesn't really seem to serve much to the plot. Like he's a bit cautious and a bit unsure about things. But he doesn't do anything important. Like he doesn't make any real calls. The only thing really that he does, which I guess kind of has an impression on you, is the fact that he wakes up naked praying to that statue, and he gets all tense whenever the thing turns up, and he seems to have the most violent dreams, but we never find out why. So we don't find out why Phil reacts to the creature in the way that he does. We don't really understand anything about his character at all, and he just seems like a bit of a scaredy cat from the off. Like he's quite a two-dimensional character, and similarly he dies just totally randomly. Like there doesn't seem any real narrative purpose behind him at all. Hutch, on the other hand, more interesting. The archetypal male. He's obviously been the ringleader of the group. Like he makes the calls, makes the decisions, and like there's a lot of respect for him. They all like him. Like I really like how his character is set up, and actually the fact that his character seems to be the natural leader of the group, and yet he's the one who dies first. Obviously that's really clever, because that sends the other three into a bit of a panic, because Phil obviously doesn't really know how to make decisions, and there's a lot of tension between Dom and between Luke, who don't really like each other, and that's all set up really well by the fact that Hutch dies first. So I really liked that thing that they did. I guess, again, there's not much more to say about him. I guess in that case he does serve his purpose. Like he does do a good job of what he does. I think the only thing that really winds me up about him is similarly with Phil, you don't really find out anything about his dreams. You don't understand what he's seen. You don't get enough of an insight into how he's feeling. The whole film is so centred around Luke, as we'll come to in a minute, that I sort of feel like the other three characters in some ways may as well have not existed, and you could have just had the one film about this one guy who's walking in the woods to get over the death of his friend, and the film actually wouldn't change much. You wouldn't have people dying, and at the end of the day it's a horror film, so I guess you have to have a bit of death just to keep the bloodthirsty fans interesting. But actually it might have been a more interesting film in that case if Hutch hadn't existed, Phil hadn't existed, if Dom hadn't existed, and you just had Luke on his own in the woods trying to, and almost like his own little retreat to get over the fact that he feels responsible about his friend's death. And Hutch, in that respect, doesn't add enough. He just adds to the manufactured tension. Dom, on the other hand, is quite interesting. Now, obviously, we do find out about his dream, and I think that was really well played. I think the fact that he sees what he wants to see, like the god kind of knows him and shows him what he wants to see and then kills him, but almost in a way where he's not totally aware. I think that's clever. Obviously, Dom's narrative purpose I thought was to be the funny guy. Like, honestly, I looked at him and went, I think you're going to add us a bit like, I don't know if anyone's seen Severance, but I think the guy's called Andy, the big guy with glasses who does all the team building stuff, and he basically is the comic relief who dies horrendously, and I thought Dom was going to do something similar, but he doesn't. He is actually quite a serious character, and he's a well-written character. You can see where he fits within that group of uni mates. Like, you can just see him, like the slightly pernickety one, the one who gets annoyed and embarrassed about any of the funny drunken stories, the one who probably got married first and probably they don't see as much of socially and sometimes irritates them in his OCD, and the one who's a bit of a drama queen and they never do anything. You can see it. You can see his character really fleshed out well. It's well written, but he also is the one who has the balls to say to Luke that we all think you're responsible, and that creates some really good tension because in the end those two do have to come together and settle their differences because they're the last two left. So I really liked that. I guess I feel frustrated in a way that you sort of only really come to like him towards the end, and I think they could have just written it with a bit more. Like, I kind of, in some ways, maybe if Luke had saved him or tried to save him, I don't know. I kind of, but I think he's well done. So I can't. In the end, Hutch and Dom were well written. I think Phil was a waste of time. But I guess what I really want to talk is to talk about Luke. So there's a few questions I have. Firstly, I don't think we really have an explanation for why Luke, Rafe Spall's character, why he has the mark and the others don't. Like, he obviously gets chosen by the god for a purpose, but what is it? Like, what's the god's end game? Is it he chooses a certain number of people to kind of worship him, but at the end of the day, they only stay alive because they offer him up they offer people to him to be killed. But I guess my question is why Luke, not the others? Like, is it because he saw real pain from this person, but not the others? Because actually, at the end of the day, they all lost their friend. I know Luke was there, so he feels more responsible, but I just don't understand why him specifically, what's going on there, because at the end of the day, Luke totally screws up the whole thing. So surely this god would have known that too, but he doesn't. Or maybe he does, we'll get onto that. The other thing is that Luke obviously sees lots of visions of the supermarket that his friend was killed in, and again, I say to myself, well, what's the point of that? Is the god showing him that? Is he seeing that for himself? Like, is that just coming at him? Like, is it only him who can see that? Is the god not generating it? It's just his mind bringing him back to the feelings of guilt from before, and the fear and almost like the frozen fear that he had of not wanting to do anything then, and now he's like, oh, it's the same situation. This time I have to do something, and he's just seeing it for himself. I don't really know. Like, I guess it doesn't answer that question. Maybe that's part of the point, but I sort of feel, if the god has generated those images to scare Luke, what's the point? Like, it almost feels like the constant reminders of the supermarket don't serve a point if what is happening is literally what is happening. And I suppose, again, I don't really like or get the ending, because so Dom says to him, burn the whole place to the ground. He doesn't do that. Sure, he burns the people, but they're the victims. I know they're the ones who are, they're setting this ritual to, for Luke to become into the group, and they're the ones who are sacrificing people. But at the end of the day, they're the victims. Like, they're just trying to survive. The real, horror of the story is this god who's killing and eating people, and well, he's not eating them, is he? He's hanging them off trees, but Luke doesn't defeat him, he defeats them, he kills all of them, and then runs away. And he doesn't burn the whole forest to the ground, as far as we can see. Maybe the fire would have spread and burnt the whole forest down, maybe, I'm not sure that's totally where we're going with that. So he doesn't really do what Dom says, and he kind of just runs away. and once he gets out of the forest, the creature can't come out of the forest because I can understand that those kind of laws that have been set into this world, but I guess I just go, well, what does he do next? Like, where does Luke go now? Does he just, right, well, I've done that, see you later, goes to the lodge, says, oh, my friends are all dead, we need to find them in the forest. Does he tell them about what's happening in the forest? Like, I don't really know where he goes. What does he go when he goes, does he do when he goes home? Like, to the police interview? Like, what's happened to your friends? Oh, they were killed by this god. Whoa, okay. Like, I just totally don't know where he goes next. If we're looking at this as a literal story, I don't understand. The ending is almost just leaves us in a what? With many unanswered questions. And there's only one real solution I have to this, and I'm kind of been trying to build up to it, is actually, in a literal sense, Luke's three friends don't serve any purpose. And this God thing doesn't make a lot of sense, and the people in the village don't either. And actually, when you the supermarket images and the ending and the way he just kind of leaves it, kind of gone ha the god, and then walks off, that doesn't make a lot of sense either. And it makes me wonder. And I know this is a cop out to say. I know this is so, but it makes me wonder whether the whole film isn't. I know it's obvious. The film is about his feelings of guilt for the fact he didn't help his friend. And it's about him trying to get over that. But I just wonder if actually the whole thing literally isn't happening. Whether it's just convenient that 6 months later he's in the forest, the same place where his friend said they would go. Well, personally, I don't know if I'd have done that. Maybe I would have done, maybe I wouldn't, I don't know. He's with his friends. And all these different things are happening that don't make any sense. And you don't get anyone else's perspective. Like, you don't get the perspective of what happened in Hutch's dream or what happened in Phil's dream. And they're not totally not the narrative is not interested in telling you about what happened in their dreams. It's not really interested in telling you about many of their thoughts and feelings as long as they're talking to Luke. The only conversations you get are conversations to Luke. Everything happens around him. We only get his perspective. He's the only person who wanders off on his own in the whole film. Like, you get more of an insight into Dom, but all of that insight from Dom is kind of to help Luke to understand what he needs to do. So I wonder if really the whole point is Luke. Maybe Luke has gone for a trek in the woods to himself, or maybe Luke is just, it's his way of conceptualising it. So actually, the reason we keep getting flashbacks to the supermarket and things that don't quite make sense because you wouldn't see him in a forest is because actually Luke is in his mind creating for himself this world which is a fearful world where he's lost everybody. Maybe his friends have abandoned him. Maybe no, they don't want to be his friends anymore because of this fact that they can't be around him because they feel like he's responsible. And actually, Luke, the demon that he's really conquering and the demon that he's really fighting against isn't this God thing. It's the fear, it's the guilt, it's the shame. And that's why we don't really get an ending. Like, in the end, he faces up against this thing that's real. These feelings of condemnation, these feelings of my friend has died and I'm sad and I can't do anything about it anymore. You know, as that line in the film where he says, when I think it's Hutch says, it wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And maybe Luke's facing up to that, it wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And he looks it in the face and he ends it. Like, he ends that guilt and he walks away from it. And to me, that's the triumphant reason for the film to exist. Actually, what's literally happening in front of you is nothing more than a metaphor for what's really going on in Luke's head. And I think if you try and make sense of all of the components, the physical components and factors of the film, you end up going, another horror film doesn't make any sense. And that's a bit how I came across in my review. But when you think about it, I think it's trying to almost set up a bit of a metaphorical story about how do we get over guilt, how do we get over shame, how do we get over condemnation. And perhaps in that case, it all being focused around Luke means maybe it didn't actually happen at all. But it's about what it's about. So, those are my thoughts anyway. So, in retrospect, it's a good film. I like it. I think it was really well done. Maybe it's too subtle for its own good, or maybe everything I've said is a load of rubbish. So we'll say it's a 3-star film, a 6 out of 10. and I guess I'll see you for another one soon.